when I was 7 years old, I watched my mother make cozonac, the traditional Romanian sweet bread. And she would dump flour, milk, eggs, butter, and sugar into a bowl. And for a moment, everything looked like complete chaos. Nothing you'd want to eat. But then she did something magical. She started kneading. And slowly, with patience and intention, chaos became dough. Disorder became structure. And by evening, our entire street smelled like home. Today, I would like to talk to you about building order from chaos, but not the kind of order that rigidly controls everything, but the kind of order that emerges when you connect the right elements with the right intention at the right time. In 2018, I was working as trend forecaster for fashion companies. And I was noticing that Romanian brands would not hire me. Company owners would often tell me, why do we need trend forecasters when we already have designers and they know the trends? True, but what they didn't understand was the role of someone who spots change, someone who can listen to culture before it speaks, and who can notice those subtle little patterns long before they become mainstream, and how to use these skills to grow and develop their businesses. So instead of trying to explain over and over again, I decided to show. And I remember that back in those days, other trend forecasters in Bucharest and studios, they were anticipating a big change that was going to impact us at a global level. We were going to transition from mass production and the scaling economy towards a symbolic economy, where we were going to design products and services that were personalized and niche, and we were going to focus on individual identity. So the world was about to change. And the big question was, when everyone is building their own custom bridge, how do we make sure these structures connect? And how do we make sure that we create an economy, an ecosystem that doesn't function just like isolated islands of individual effort? So, what did I do? I invited 50 people to my home, from which I knew 10%, not to throw a party, but to ask them to help me to build the next background for my art exhibition. On the invitation, it was written, "Help the artist." My idea was to bring together diverse people with strong personalities that would create something, a work, that I could further use to show how a product can emerge from real, creative, authentic collaboration. And I prepared for them a space. And I gave them a task to inspire them to act. I covered one of my rooms in a paper. I used 67 Romanian and international newspapers and magazines, 15 square meters of recycled paper, 250 meters of tape, 50 markers and pens. And I worked for days, but I worked so passionately. When the moment came, 34 people showed up, and they were indeed very, very diverse. They were designers, professors, entrepreneurs, corporate workers. And as they entered my home, I told them I needed their help. I needed their help to build a manifesto. And this manifesto would be about a new type of media, secondhand media, that we were going to create there together as a response of what was going wrong in the press those days. Because I remember I was very frustrated because of the amount of fake news, disinformation, and bad quality of the articles that were published. And I knew I was not the only one experiencing this feeling. They were too. So I found a common ground for them and I to come together and create. And then I gave each of them one envelope containing one word randomly assigned from a list of 6 Romanian publications, pretty known, Gândul, Libertatea, Adevărul, Femeia, one matching color and tape, and I told them, please go inside the room, wherever you find space. Reflect on that concept, express your idea however you feel. Just be free, be creative. And so they did. And this should be a video, but anyway, for 4 hours, 34 people who barely knew each other, some of them never met in their lives, started working together. Copying, pasting, underlining, drawing, collaging. And it was a chaos, believe me, it was a mess. But from that mess, something beautiful emerged. Because at the end of the day, we had a surface that contained all our thoughts, emotions, ideas, struggles. And this is how the room looked the next day. And when I entered it, I felt overwhelmed and over-emotional, and my eyes started to tear up because I realized that every little corner carried something human, a touch, an emotion, a feeling. And I understood that the future is not going to be built in isolation, but through connectivity. And I promised myself that from that day on, all the projects that I will do will be bridges between people, between disciplines, or between worlds that need to meet. And I documented everything. I took notes, I took pictures of every little corner, every design. For example, the color yellow was assigned to the word woman, and as you can see, there are many associations, different associations made with this term, from emotional instability to family or parenthood, the life of Emilia Scutuliana, or feminist, of course. And after I documented everything, I created a digital collage, which I printed on a fabric and transformed it into a garment, into a coat. And the coat was our product, was the product of our co-creative process. And it carried, again, all our emotions, all our ideas, the manifesto. And I didn't stop there. I gave the coat back to the community, and I asked each member who contributed in the exhibition to add to it, to remove things, to cut if they liked, to write down, because I wanted to have a living artifact of trust. And when it was ready, and here it would be lovely, I managed to press play, and I don't know how there are some videos. So after the garment was ready, we took it to the streets, and together with one of the participants in the project, we stopped people, random passers-by. We told them the story, we told them about the manifesto, or what we were doing, and we asked them if they want to collaborate and to interact with the code, to pose, as we were shooting them, because I wanted this manifesto to speak louder and to as many people as possible. And we did that, and we have a couple of videos, super funny, super nice. We used them as teasers for the final exhibition. And I was impressed by the openness of the people on the street that said, yes, I do it. And maybe you wonder why I decided to realize code, to produce a code. I'm a fashion designer, I study fashion, and for me a coat is a very versatile product, because a coat you can put on, it protects you from the sun, from the cold, from the rain, but it can also be a symbol of status. For example, in the case of medical doctors, they wear their white coat as a symbol of authority and care and responsibility. But there's also another layer to it. The coat can reflect the outer self, is that identity that you decide to express into the world when you go out into the street, and it's that story that you decide to wear. And our coat was something like that. But it was not a reflection of one individual, but of a collective. And it carried many hands, many stories, and it belonged to everyone who had ever touched it. And even though it was fun and super exciting and joyful, all the process, it was not just that. What we did without even noticing is we prototyped a movement. We showed how a movement is born. When people come together, they share an idea and they decide to carry it forward, adding all their colors to the story. And the project was exposed for one day in Bucharest in 2018, in a location that generously opened their doors for us for free. And I went there and I booked a room that was specially designed for projection. It was like an immersive experience. We put the video and it felt like we were inside the exhibition, and I was very, very happy for the people who are coming to see again their work, to see it in a different setup. But in the day of the exhibition, the hosts came to me and they told me that they were sorry, but that room was booked by corporation for a meeting, and it was not available anymore. So you can imagine how I felt. It was basically us creatives versus capitalism, which was not very nice. And I was devastated, frustrated. I wanted to give up, to leave, but I decided to stay and adapt because of the people who were coming. And I understood that our society was still treating creative initiatives as secondary, easy to dispose or to replace. But in that day, I also realized something for myself and for my professional journey, that I wasn't just a designer or a trend forecaster, but I was becoming someone who was building spaces for people to come together, to create, to collaborate, and to learn. And I continued to produce this type of events in Bucharest and later in Rome. And in Rome, while I worked at Academia di Romania, I produced this installation called Invitation to Dialogue, which was a footprint of the table of Constantin Brâncuș. And I invited artists and thinkers to come together and write down in silence on this surface their ideas and their proposal for a better shared future. And all these experiences taught me something essential, that chaos isn't the opposite of order, but the beginning of it. And real order doesn't come from control, but from real, authentic connection. So here's my challenge to you. Look at the chaos in your life. Look at those pieces that don't fit together. The uncertainty, the fears, the frustrations, and think, what would happen if you would stop trying to solve everything alone? Who could you call today? What coffee would you go to? Which meeting would you attend? What network would you join? Because let me tell you something, the bridges that you're building today, the ones that will carry you from where you are to where you want to be, cannot rest on one single pile. They need multiple foundations, they need connection, and they need community. But there's also good news. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be there, and they just have to connect. And my mom, she taught me something essential those days when I was younger that took me years to understand. That chaos doesn't become order through violence, but through authentic, intentional connection. She didn't attack the dough. She worked with it slowly, putting all the ingredients together until they become greater than the sum of them all. And this is what we're called to do today. To take the chaos of independent work, the uncertainty of this economy, the isolation of modern entrepreneurship, and through connection, by building bridges and choosing collaboration over competition, to knit it into something beautiful, something that smells like home. Thank you.